Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. Guys and girls, you know the drill. I'm a retired New York City police detective, and if you like all things true crime related from that police detective's perspective, consider hitting that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we're going to talk about Orrin and Orson West, the trial for Trezell and Jacqueline West. It's day 3. Day 3 is in the books. We're going to talk about the first, second, and third day. We're going to give you the recap. We have been listening sporadically to some of the audio, myself, my guests. We have been listening to some of the audio, especially today, and there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to talk about. Hey, before I get into it, I want to say special thank you to the replay viewers, the channel members, the Patreon supporters, the moderators. You guys are what makes this a great place. I give thanks and praise to each and every one of you. And without your questions and comments, we really don't have anything here. So it's great to have you guys here asking the tough questions and following these cases. And I'm just going to give a little bit of a background for some of the folks who do not know or not familiar with this case. Orrin and Orson West, Cinsere and Classic, that was their birth names. But when they were adopted, they were renamed. Their names were changed to Orrin and Orson West. They were reported missing by their adoptive parents, Trezell and Jacqueline West, on December 21st, 2020. And this was from California City in California. This is right outside of the Mojave Desert in a very remote area, small community. They were reported missing on the 21st at the late part of the day at around 5:40-ish. Don't hold me exactly to it. But 5:40, 5:43, the phone call was in and the police responded, the California City Police Department. A very small police department, I think with the just single digits in officers and a police chief, John Walker. Now, we all know, and we've seen many interviews with John Walker. The police chief, Brian Wang from 23 ABC, interviewed him. He should be joining us shortly. But in this case, the parents said that the two boys, 3 and 4 years old, ventured outside of a gate in the backyard and just vanished in thin air, just disappeared. The story was a bunch of hogwash. Most of us investigators, retired investigators like myself, and my guest who's going to be joining me and playing co-host with me tonight, police off the cuff, retired Sergeant Bill Cannon from the Homicide Detective Squad in the 2-4 precinct. We spoke strongly about this case and we smelled foul right from the get-go. But I want to play a little piece from day 1, and this is just a minute or so. But this is just a little piece from the day 1 of the trial. Fast forward from December 21st, 2020, all the way here, fast forward to, here we are in the current day, March of 2023. We have the trial in full swing, day 3. But this is from day 1. So I'm going to play this real quick for you guys just to set it up for some of the folks who might not understand or know what's going on. But this is where we're at as of day 1, which was Tuesday.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Trezell West. This is Jacqueline West. And their 2 sons are missing. Their sons, Orrin and Orson, are missing. And we're here because it's easier to charge them than for them to explain why they couldn't find them.
This is the last known photo ever taken of Orrin. It's recovered from the cell phones that were seized in this case. This is the last known photo of Orson, taken in the apartment at Lotus Lane, July 25th, 2020. Now, during one of the interviews, and it'll be played for you here, Jacqueline West talks about how she talked to her kids about Orrin and Orson. She said, "I told them, pretend they're not here. Just act like they don't live here. Just go do your work." She talked about what she did with Orrin and Orson. "I always keep them separated. I keep them separated. I focus mainly on schooling while they're playing. They don't really play together, but they have played together. I just don't know." But that's essentially what happened to Orrin and Orson. They were in that home, but they were kept separate. And then ultimately, sometime in September, they were killed and have not been seen since then.
So there you have it. That was an opening statement by the prosecution. The prosecutor in this case, that was his statement, and what you heard in the beginning was the defense. So they did it a little bit backwards. But I want to introduce my two guests. These are great people. Retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon from the Homicide Squad. He served 27 years. He's got his great YouTube channel, Police Off the Cuff. I'm repping Police Off the Cuff sweatshirt tonight. I want to introduce my good friend, Bill Cannon. Thank you, Bill, for joining.
Thank you for inviting me, Ron. This is a real privilege.
You know, you and I spoke about this case early on in late 2020 and going into 2021. As a matter of fact, I had you and Joe Murray. We had Phil on several times. We spoke about this case as it was progressing and as this thing was, forming. And we had our opinions on it, and we were pretty right about these two. So there's just so much more to talk about and unpack here at the trial. But yeah, Bill, these two, their story from the beginning, that statement that we heard, and we're going to play it here in a short period of time. We knew right away it just didn't smell right. It didn't pass the smell test.
You know, Ron, so many things can be determined by body language. And when these two, Trezell and Jacqueline, gave a statement to the press, they couldn't even look straight ahead. They were looking straight at the ground, and they were wearing these big COVID masks. And just their body language was so inappropriate for someone, if it was true, someone that had just had a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old go missing. Because obviously they knew the fate of the 4-year-old and the 3-year-old, Orrin and Orson West. They knew it right at that time. Of course, no one else did, but their body language spoke volumes. And I don't always go to body language because it doesn't always mean what we think it means. But when you see their body language in that press conference in front of their house, it is so telling. Even an amateur sleuth will say, "Oh my God, they did it."
Yeah, and we called it out right away. These two at that press conference, or what they held out in front of their house was just. He referred to his sons as rambunctious, and just craziness. But listen, I don't want to waste any time because we have another great guest. I'm going to let you introduce Melanie because you do a great job of it, Bill.
Well, thank you. My friend of over 10 years, and I actually met her in acting class, and she turns out she's a very accomplished woman. She's an attorney. She's the mother of 5, and she's an actress, and she's a very talented lady. Welcome to the show, Melanie Little.
Hi, Bill. Hi, Ron. Thanks so much for having me tonight.
Melanie, you are a wealth of information. You're so smart on so many different levels when it comes to talking about these cases. And I said right away when I had my daily dose of Bill Cannon, him and I speak every day, I said, I want to have an attorney on. And he was like, "What are you, crazy? Call Melanie. Get Melanie on." I want to thank you for taking out the time. As Bill said, you're an experienced trial attorney with over 25 years experience. You're a mother of 5, and you have a busy life. And I asked you today by text message, "Hey, could you listen to this trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West?" And up until today, you probably never even heard of this case. You dove right in. You were on the live feed, the audio feed, day 3, and I just want to ask you, and I know this is a lot to ask, what was your take from day 3? And we're going to go back to day 1 right after I ask you this question, but I'm putting you on the spot, jumping right in the hot seat.
Sure. Well, you and I spoke earlier today, and the live stream is interesting because it's audio only. So usually when people watch trials and when we see trials that are happening, we're watching the video and the audio. This is audio only. It's not recordable, and it's not, we can't broadcast anything that we heard today. But what we did hear today was from the police officer who was the first to arrive on the scene after the father called 911 to report his son's missing. And it was rough. It was really rough. The defense attorney, the woman who is cross-examining him, put him through the ringer. I mean, it was a brilliant cross-examination. This guy, I don't even know what to say. You guys are with the police department. You can tell me, but I just from what I heard today, that cross-examination just
Yeah.
excoriated him.
Yeah, and I'm going to say this: defense attorney Torres was the female that you heard cross-examining him in the audio. He just was not prepared. Officer Hansen from the California City Police Department, who was a field training officer at the time of this call, December 21st of 2020, he responded to the home and he took charge of the scene. He took charge of the interview. He took charge of going to the neighboring homes to get the video doorbell footage. And when he was asked about that on day 3, he was asked about multiple different things, but he said numerous times, I wrote this down and I highlighted numerous times, I don't remember. And he also said, I don't recall. I felt like I was listening to Oliver North in the Iran-Contra hearing. It was just amazing to me that he was not prepared. And this is heartbreaking for any seasoned detective, because when I prepare for a trial, and Bill, I'll go to you next. When a homicide detective or even a first officer on the scene in the NYPD or any police department, you prepare. You look at your copious notes that you took. You look at your 61s, and that's the police reports here in New York. You look at all of the related information. Bill, you want to talk about preparing for a trial?
Yeah, absolutely. And, testifying is something that you get better at, of course, the more you do it. But if you don't recall, you could say, can I refer to my notes? And take your notes out by all means, because no one in that courtroom, including the judge, the jury, expects you to remember something that happened 2 years ago like it happened yesterday. So you refer to your notes. One of the things I wanted to mention, because I noticed that the defense attorney was using this technique, she was getting into a rhythm and saying, is that yes? Yes. Is that yes? Yes. I would never let a defense attorney do that to me. I would slow him or her down by, if she says, is that a yes? I'd be like, and I would think about my answer, and that will break up their rhythm and they'll stop doing it. They won't like that you did that to them, but you can just say, I'm not just answering it at your speed because you want me to. I want to think about what you just asked me. And that officer was getting thrown off because she was, is that a yes? Yes. Is that a yes? And she was getting in this rhythm. And if you let a defense attorney do that in your questioning, she's going to eviscerate you.
Yeah, and that she did. Melanie, I know you and I, we had a text string that was just, I wish that I could show it here, but I'm not going to do that.
No,
it was brutal. It was
embarrassing. I mean, this guy was not prepped. He did not review his notes. He remembered nothing. She was peppering him with questions and he just kept saying, I don't know. I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like we couldn't see him, obviously, but we could hear him. And it just sounded very blasé. He sounded like, I don't know. I don't remember.
Melanie,
when she started questioning him about the diapers, that was a whole weird questioning too.
Towards the end of it, and that was the adding insult to injury. She said, so you'd never purchase diapers for your family? I want to read a quote that I took from Counsel Torres. She said, and her last name is Torres Stallings. She said to Officer Hansen, Officer Hansen, are you lying to this jury at this time? And did you lie to the court on such and such date when you gave testimony? Because you're telling us here you do not recall, but on such and such date, and I don't have the exact date, and that's why I'm not going to say it, you told us that you knew about this. So there were so many things. And the dogs, she questioned them about the dogs who came into the home and picked up the children's scent inside the home, but then lost it outside. He's not a canine officer, and he could have simply said, I yield to the professionals. I would ask you to ask that of the dog handler. But he just simply said, I don't know. And that's not something that you want a jury to hear, because you can tell the audience here, I don't have to say it for you. But the bottom line is the defense, all they have to do is create reasonable doubt. And that they did today, my friends. Melanie, any thoughts on that?
Ron, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Bill.
No, I was just going to say that if a defense attorney asks you a question that you're not qualified to answer, you should feel very comfortable saying, I don't feel I have the qualifications to answer that. Like, for example, if they start asking you like, where did the curb jut out from the building line? I'm not, I'm not an engineer and I didn't have a tape measure. I'm not qualified to say exactly how many feet that was, because they can try to lock you into things that, again, will create doubt, but you may not be able to answer that. So you should just say that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Melanie.
Yeah, I mean, reasonable doubt. Look, we have no bodies here. This is a no body murder case. So that's already going to be tough for the jury to swallow. And now for them to have heard this testimony where it's going to seem like this investigation was bungled from jump, from the second they arrived on the scene, and this guy doesn't remember anything. And it wasn't good. It was not good.
It was disastrous. And,
Yeah.
and again, it's not something that you want to see coming from the responding police agency. The California City Police Department were the first responding agency. They were supplemented by the FBI, and then Bakersfield. Thank God Bakersfield, California came into play. Hey, I want to just interrupt us just for a minute because we have a news reporter who worked in Bakersfield, California. He's in his vehicle. Christian is a great, great friend of Crime Time with DutyRon. I interviewed with him a few times. He's covered the boys' case. He's a community guy. He is a wonderful soul. He has his heart invested in this case, and he is no longer in that Bakersfield market, I believe, and he's going to probably get mad at me, but I think he's in Los Angeles. But Christian, I'm going to add you into the stream right now. Christian Galeno, thank you so much for spending the time to talk about Cinsere and Classic, our boys, Orrin and Orson West. How are you, Christian?
Hey, I'm doing great. Yes, I am in Los Angeles. I'm no longer in Bakersfield.
Right.
But yeah, this case actually kind of just got dropped on my lap. And I was kind of like the reporter that picked it up and was the one that saw it up to the point where Trezell and Jacqueline West got arrested. So yeah, but thanks for having me on tonight, and I appreciate you guys still, giving, not forgetting the boys' names. I think that was the most important thing throughout my entire coverage. We never wanted to forget that, these boys mattered, and, justice needed to be served for the family of the boys and for the boys as well.
Hey, Christian, I have retired Sergeant Bill Cannon and my good friend, attorney Melanie Little here. I wanted to ask you, and I'm sure that my friends here, they feel the same way. We wanted to try to ask you, like, what was your gut feeling on reporting on this story? What was your sense from you dealt with California City Police Department, John Walker, and then Bakersfield Police Department took it over. And when Bakersfield Police Department took it over, I know for me and for Bill and most of the people who were watching it, we got a little bit of a feeling like, okay, this is starting to kick in, into high gear. Well, I wanted to get maybe some of your thoughts, Christian, on, because you were boots on the ground there. You were with the families, you were with Roe and the biological family. What was your thoughts on how this investigation went from the beginning to now?
It was very frustrating. It was very frustrating because every single month that went by, another vigil, hoping for the return of both brothers, went by without any answers. And then we would continue to question Bakersfield Police Department. And then we would go back to California City to figure out, question the police department there. And we would get these exact same answers. There's still no results, no leads yet. Then we started to hear, about more searches that were continuing to happen, but the departments kept everything very, very tight-lipped. So as a reporter, I took numerous trips to California City, and from the beginning, when the case was handed over to me as a reporter, I had this gut feeling that something was off. In looking back, because I actually started working in Bakersfield in the summer of 2021. So I arrived there about halfway through, when about 6, 7, 8 months after the boys were reported missing. So while I was kind of playing catch up, I was still trying to figure out what was new in the case. We would go back to California City, but And I think everybody kind of remembers that interview that Trezell and Jacqueline West sort of had the day or a couple of days after they were reported missing, and they had that press conference, which was actually the one and only press conference that was ever held by anybody in the family. But from that moment on, every time I would have to rewatch that press conference, that my gut feeling just told me that something was off, that they weren't being quite honest. And I think that was sort of like the feeling that the entire community also sort of shared, that they didn't trust what they were saying. But for me, that was my gut feeling from the very beginning, that something was off, that they weren't being completely honest with their answers. And then, almost a year and a couple of months later, they get arrested, and we find out everything else that we know so far, because we don't know a lot. And I think the most shocking part was that, and when we would question BPD and California City Police Department, was that they told us that about 90% of the evidence that they had recovered in this years-long investigation had not been released. And then, they get arrested, and we get the gag order imposed. So that made it even more difficult for us, because we still were left in the blank. The community was left in the blank, and the family, the biological family member of the boys, was still left in the blank, and in the unknown, with much uncertainty as well. So it was a very, very difficult case to have to follow during my time there in Bakersfield.
Yeah. And, it was tough for you too, because you took over when Perla moved on, right?
That's right.
Perla she did an unbelievable job of interviewing Chief John Walker and asking the tough questions. But my two guests here, Melanie, I'm going to go to you first. A lot of people hear this same redundant statement: we need to keep it close to the vest. And as a trial attorney, and as someone who knows how the system works, what's, for the people listening outside the country, there's different law systems across the world. What is the most important thing when it comes to these cases, to from a defense attorney standpoint, and also from the police and prosecution standpoint?
Well, listen, from an attorney standpoint, you want to keep misinformation from spreading. That's the main point of a gag order, because you don't want to taint the jury pool. If enough misinformation gets out there, you're going to have a hard time picking a jury.
Right.
So the less people know, I know it's frustrating for us, because we want to know, and the media wants to know, and the reporters want to know, everybody wants to know. But the key is to prevent the misinformation from spreading.
Bill, can you expand on that?
Something, Ron, one of the most important things in this case, and I hope that I don't know if in fact they did a good job, is the response to the scene. All right. Because the response to the scene, that place should have been locked down immediately. If it was New York City, I would have been right on the phone to get aviation up in the air immediately. Because the claim by the parents was a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old walked out of the yard. If that was true, how far could they have gotten? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's absolute nonsense that they walked away from the house. Then you got to lock both of those parents into a statement separately, of course, interview and interrogation right away. And in the beginning, you can be a little soft, because we're going to treat this as a missing person. But as you started questioning them, you're going to realize these two are lying, and something is very rotten in Denmark right here. There's some nefarious details here, and I don't like it. And then you start moving in a little harder, and you start, look, they were contradicting themselves, and their body language was horrific right from the beginning. So you need a really experienced, outstanding interviewer and interrogator. You need 2 of them at least, more than 2. And then you need someone, and if it was the NYPD, we'd call in detectives from special victims, because they're the best at interviewing children. And we would definitely lock their children into statements too, because children can tell you something that is implicating the parents without even intending to do that, because they're trying to be honest, So that was important. The response to the scene was so important. I don't know how well they did that. From what I understand, it doesn't look like they did a good job of documentation, because that is the mark of professionalism. Interview, interrogation, and outstanding documentation of interviews and evidence on the scene.
because any good defense attorney is going to rip as much as they can apart. That's their job. But I want to just say to you, add to what you just said, Sarge, is that Chief John Walker stated that he immediately, because he came from LAPD, he immediately called out to the LAPD aviation unit, and he had the helicopters up. And Christian might not have known this because I don't think he was reporting on the story early on, but in the very first, I think, 2 hours, aviation responded and was scouring the desert. They had to keep landing to refuel, and they kept coming back out. So aviation, they had horses out, they had ATVs. Kern County Search and Rescue was responded immediately. They went door to door to the neighborhood, and I'm going to show a Google Earth image later on. It is the Mojave Desert, and Christian, you can talk a little bit stronger on this. It's a dusty, hot, dirty, wind swirling up stuff, tumbleweed. I mean, this is not your typical neighborhood. California City, that area where these boys allegedly went missing from, is very remote. Christian, can you talk on to that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, California City it's a very desolate place. I mean, it's desert, miles of desert land. And that was something that the search and rescue teams often would share with us, that was the biggest challenge, because there was just so many square mileage that, California City was spread across, that, they had to kind of eliminate certain areas of, the possibility that the boys weren't there. So that was one of the biggest challenges that they kind of told us and shared with us that they faced, because just California City was just so big, so desolate. And I mean, the terrain also, and there was just, if they did end up dumping the bodies anywhere, it could have been just, in any part of California City. And if you've never been to California City, through that Mojave Desert, it's quite the sight. It's dry, like you mentioned. It's dusty. During the summer, it's scorching hot as well, and then during the winters, when the boys are missing, it's super, super cold as well. Close to freezing temperatures as well. But yeah, like I sort of arrived to Bakersfield in the middle of this whole, a couple of months after my colleague Perla Shaheen, who's now in San Diego, was reporting initially on this case, and then for a couple of months it kind of just went unreported. And then when I came back, then we started covering again the vigils. And actually the first vigil that I covered when I jumped on the case was in California City. And it was standing in front of that house, like the moment that I stood for the first time in front of that house, I got chills throughout my entire body, because it was a very, the vibe that the house gave was not a nice vibe. Like there was definitely some sort of evil like vibe coming from there. And then, so many months had gone by, and the original vigil or altar that, the community had built for the boys was still there in front of the house. And, I got to meet a lot of the family, and that was the more difficult part. Like California City, for me personally, is a place that I don't think I would want to return to, just because, all the different cases that I also covered out of California City. And, there was another particular case that I covered out of California City that went cold for almost a decade. And then when we started covering it and putting more pressure on it, then, it got the ball rolling, and eventually they found, and I'm talking about the Desiree Thompson case.
Yes.
They found her body. They dug her body out, her remains, out of a house in California City. So it hurts to have to talk to residents of California City, and they're so jaded to the fact that cases like this go cold, and it's such a normal thing for them, like in the sense that they're hopeless. Like they've lost hope in any ounce of justice ever coming to California City for any of these different cases that have gone cold out of California City. So it's definitely not a nice place to go. So that was definitely my take on it.
Christian, your insight is invaluable, because lots of people that are watching are not ever going to get a chance to go into California City. Like you said, you got a creepy vibe from that house, and you're not the first that told me that. I got that from many people that I've had conversations with, and actually some of the residents that live in that surrounding area, they sent me messages on DutyRon.com and told me that, you know, it has just a creepy past, California City.
Mhm.
But putting that aside, you covered this case and you did a great job with it. The media has their job to do. And as Bill and I say here, retired homicide detective sergeant, the media sometimes can be the police best friend and our worst enemy. And it's the worst enemy part is not because we dislike you guys. It's just that sometimes leaked information that comes from sources can have an adverse effect when the defense gets a hold of that. And as Melanie said, when you want to have a fair and impartial jury, it's hard to do that. And there was talk in this case of having a change of venue, and the gag orders that were put in place. And the reason those gag orders were put in place is because people were jumping the fence in California City to get into the backyard. And that could potentially have been a crime scene. Before these two were arrested, which was March 1st of 2022, just a year after Bakersfield took the case, you had people jumping the fence to take YouTube videos and make ridiculous TikToks and all this craziness. So that's why they shut this thing down. And they said, hey, listen, if you are caught trespassing at that location, you're going to be arrested. And that slowly stopped this craziness from going on.
Definitely.
But I don't know how much
I-
time you have. Go ahead, Christian.
I do want to add something interesting though, that from the perspective of the reporter, because I think for us and for me as a reporter, the biggest kind of like moment in this case was obviously we were getting frustrated by the fact that there wasn't anything new. The investigations just kind of were running on where they were just kind of leaking over month to month with the same thing, and no action was kind of happening. So me and my Telemundo colleague Jose Gaspar, who's also a veteran reporter in Bakersfield, and then with the help of our political reporter, actually, we kind of united forces. Maddie Gannon, who is actually still in Bakersfield, for many months, the assignment that I was working on was tracking Jacqueline and Trezell West, because I don't know if for those who were following the case, we did not know where they were at.
Yeah, they disappeared.
As a reporter, we constantly were, visiting the home of Wanda West's home. Nobody would appear. If somebody would come out, they would shut the door on us.
And Wanda West, Christian, is for the audience, is Trezell's mother, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
So she still, from what we know, she still lives in Bakersfield, and we would try to visit the home to, just ask, like, do you know where they're at? We just want to talk to them. Like, they haven't given a press conference in so many months. And that's what we just wanted. So then one day we kind of just, we went to visit back the apartments that they initially lived in. And we started, hearing a lot of stories from the neighbors. They would tell us kind of like the last time that they saw them. And in working, when I joined forces with my colleague Jose Gaspar, my former colleagues Jose Gaspar and Maddie Gannon, we tracked down a new address for Trezell and Jacqueline West at a P.O. box in a post office in Edison, California, which was actually a couple of miles east of Bakersfield. So we, it was sheer happenstance that one day we kind of just went to check out the P.O. box. We went to go check out the post office, and we walk in, and we're taking video of the P.O. box. We're asking, the clerk, obviously he can't give us any information because it's personal information that he can't really divulge. But as I'm recording video of the P.O. box, just for my records and for any future story that we get, a man walks into the post office in a hood, sunglasses, and with a mask.
Trezell.
And he looks at us looking at the P.O. box, and as soon as he acknowledges that it's the P.O. box that belongs to Trezell and Jacqueline West, he turns around and walks out the door. And then I look over to my colleague Jose Gaspar, and I'm a little shocked because it's like, why would that person have that reaction? And we start questioning, is it Trezell West? So we immediately, walk out, and we start questioning this man who clearly sounds like Trezell West, but is giving us a different name. And he was walking towards the Winnebago, which later on turned out that they were living in that Winnebago that we actually found
They
at
got
that
arrested
post
in that
office.
Winnebago. They got arrested in it.
Right. So we, you know, we questioned him. We kind of gave up. We thought it wasn't him. But then it turns out that later on, a trucker that was in the mini market next to the post office overheard us talking to the clerk about the case, and that we think that it was Trezell. And he followed the Winnebago onto the highway and took a picture of it, and then was posted to like one of the Facebook groups, like one of the community groups in Bakersfield. And then this whole thing just kind of started. So then we went back to the station, and it started to blow up. And that same evening was when the charges were filed for them. So it was a little weird for us because we were just kind of questioning, and I never was able to find out if the police departments were just sort of looking to track Trezell and Jacqueline West for so many months. And then when we finally did find them, they started searching for them, because then the Winnebago was found in the western part of Bakersfield, like a couple of miles west of Bakersfield, like in the outskirts. So that was like the biggest shock for me in following this whole case, and kind of just how a little bit of that investigative journalism kind of led to that. You could say it led to kind of like that arrest as well. We like to say that that's probably what it led to. It
happened a short time after that, because I followed that whole thing. I looked at it, looked back at it, and I said, holy shit, these guys saw Trezell in the post office. And I think it was very shortly thereafter. But Melanie, you could tell Christian, stay tuned to the trial, because you may hear about it in the trial.
Right, sure. I think we're going to hear a lot about it. So maybe it was you. Maybe you're the one who found them. Maybe I got to think they had eyes on these people. What do you guys think? You think they had eyes on them, or like
Bill, they're living out of they're living out of a Winnebago, and they're on the road. The FBI is involved in this case.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just at this point. You don't have rinky-dink California City PD. And I'm sorry. I mean, I don't like to say that about, but now after listening and hearing all of the stuff that I heard today in court, they leave a lot to be desired, because if you have police officers and if you have a small amount of them, at least have a tightened up ship. Bill, what's your thoughts on them trailing Trezell and Jacqueline West prior to their arrest?
I mean, absolutely. They should have had them, under surveillance, because they're suspects in the disappearance of a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Right.
And they really had no explanation at all. I thought it was curious in the trial where the defense attorney said, they're only being charged because they have 2 lost children. I'm not saying it verbatim, but I thought that was a weird statement. They're being charged. Yeah. If you have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old and they're missing, there's a serious problem there. They're either dead or you're an incompetent parent. And, so all of these things, I don't look, we watched the Alec Murdaugh case, right? And we kept telling the audience how circumstantial evidence is very, very powerful evidence when it's piled up high. And the same thing is going to be true with the Brian Kohberger case. Circumstantial evidence is very, very powerful. But they have to collect that circumstantial evidence in a competent manner so they don't, destroy the police. And the officer on the stand today wasn't giving a lot of confidence to the police side. However, as we said, circumstantial evidence. Look, remember when Trezell West, right after the 2 boys were missing, he took the van out and was doing a pseudo search for about 10 minutes for them. Do you remember that?
13 minutes.
That was so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like
very short period of time.
Right. That's a circumstantial thing. That was a joke. The chalk, all the things that we're going to find out there, and they're lying about. And then the defense attorney talking about the dirty diaper. What she was implying was that, did you test it for DNA? Could that have been one of the boys? I read it right away. That's what she was trying to lead to.
Yeah.
No, because we usually don't test dirty diapers for DNA, because they were reported to us missing, but it's sort of, I could see where she was going with it.
Right. I want to go to the 911 call, because on day one, which they didn't play on here, and obviously you can't play that 911 call, but I did hear it and I took some notes from it. This is Trezell West when he called 911 to report his 2 boys missing from the backyard. And this is word for word. I wrote it down. 911 operator says, "Can I help you?" And he says, I'm wondering," this is his exact words. I wrote it down in parentheses. "I'm wondering, ma'am, did anybody call and say they found some black children, little black boys?" What? This is what he said to the 911 operator. And she said, "Excuse me?" Like words to that effect. And she was like, are you calling to report your children missing? Like, who calls? And there was no excitement. There was no urgency. He was calm, cool, and collective. If my kids, 3 and 4 years old, were missing from my yard, and I brought this up, my son Frankie is 26 years old and my oldest is 30. But when my little son Frankie was a little boy, I brought him to Shea Stadium. It was still Shea Stadium at the time. And my wife said, it was with Little League. They had this little parade and they were behind home plate. My wife said, I got to bleep myself, "If you lose Frankie at the stadium, don't you take your eye off of him." He was behind home plate, and David Wright, he went to go get an autograph with David Wright, and I lost him for like 3 seconds, 4 seconds. And I was in sheer panic.
Mhm.
Like, I actually felt I was going to pass out because I could just see my wife saying, "You lost Frankie." But I'm just saying, this guy is calling 911 to report his kids missing from the backyard. And he says, "I'm wondering, anybody call that said they found some little black boys?" What? What's your thoughts on that, Melanie?
Anybody who's a parent knows the sheer sense of panic when you're in a department store and your kid is right next to you, and then all of a sudden your kid is gone. And I mean, it is a major sense of panic. You can't even describe it to somebody who doesn't have little kids, because it's the scariest thing. They can disappear in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he stands outside and waits for the police to come for 13 minutes.
Yeah.
Instead of going out and looking for his kids. And the mother, Jacqueline, never left the house at all.
She came out in the towards the end when the police were called to meet the squad car out front. Because I remember with my own eyes viewing that video from one of the neighbors' house across the
They
way.
have like Ring doorbell footage or
Right.
something.
This was footage from the house on the side that shot through the side. So it wasn't the Ring. It was like more IP camera stuff. We haven't heard about this yet, I don't think. But she came out to the squad car and then went right back into the house. But the officer, the responding officers, there was 2 of them, but Officer Hansen and Cabrera's, I think it is Cabrera's. But Hansen said that Jacqueline West was more concerned with the people harassing them day 2 than finding the boys. And he stated that in court. And the father said that the boys were in the backyard on the patio, not on the dirt, not in the dirt. He specifically said not in the dirt because there's no footprints of them in the dirt. So this perp is a thinking perp. And he said specifically, "I want to keep them close. I want to keep them close." But listen, before we get into all of this, we're gonna let Christian go. I know that he's got stuff to do. He's still working. But I want to say thank you, Christian, for your, the tough reporting, the great work that you've done for this community in California City and in Bakersfield, and the way you touch the biological family and the community people. You really created an unbelievable bond, because the way people speak about you to me is that you're almost like a brother to these people. And what you did, I don't think many reporters can do what you did here with this case. So you should be very proud of yourself. And I'm honored to be friends with you and call you a friend. And if there's anything that I can ever do, and I'm sure Bill or Melanie, you just call on to me, and we'll, help give you any type of resources or, sourced information that we could give you from our trades. So.
Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate, it's an honor to be brought back, even though, I'm long gone from Bakersfield. It's one of those cases that really just touched me and marked me as a journalist as well, and taught me the real reason, and value of journalism, and why it values to a community, and why it matters to, to have good journalists, to cover these stories that matter to, to the community. So thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate it. And, yeah, whenever I'm also there in service for anyone. So if you ever need anything,
You got my
you know
number.
where to find me.
You got my number, and my friends here. I'm sure that they agree. Anything you need, you just reach out. Thank you, Christian.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. You guys
Sensitive
all have a
journalists
great
are-
evening.
Yeah.
You too, Christian.
Take care. We'll
Thank
talk
you.
to you soon.
Bye now.
All right. So, I didn't expect him to come on because Jennifer Nobles, who is a community leader, she has a business in Bakersfield. She got me started with the digital billboards for Orrin and Orson West, and we spent over $15,000 of this channel's money to sponsor the $1,000 a month digital billboard. And we did that for 12 months, and then we did 2 more months, and then 2.5 more months in another location. And it was from the generous people in the chat and part of this community. People were sending in donations for that digital billboard, and Lamar Advertising ran that billboard for us with those boys' names and faces on Highway 99 for all of that time. So I want to say thank you to everybody who has donated to our boys, to Cinsere and Classic, Orrin and Orson West. I want to go back to day 2. Let's play this little clip. It's only 1:28. This is day 2 because we covered the 911 call. We just talked about Trezell. There was silly rumors about the chalk statement, meaning he was playing with the dogs' names, which were not chalk. The dogs' names we have, I have them written down here. But anyways, that was another misinformation and rumor. I think one dog was Mia and the other one was Nairobi. So those are the 2 dogs. The boys were not playing with the dogs on the patio. They were playing with chalk, because we heard in court today there was chalk on the patio and people were saying that chalk was planted there and yada, yada, yada. It was a whole bunch of nonsense. But let's play day 2, and then we'll come back for a little bit of commentary from you guys.
In another courtroom, the murder trial against Jacqueline and Trezell West continued today, with a California City police officer taking the witness stand this morning. Officer Brian Hansen testified that he became suspicious shortly after responding to the West's home for a report of 2 missing children. This was in December of 2020. Hansen said he checked the backyard where the West said Orrin and Orson had been playing, but saw no footprints made by a child's shoe. This is not a normal situation, Hansen said into his body-worn camera video that was playing in court this morning. These kids didn't just walk away, he said. The biggest revelation in this case so far came from the prosecution yesterday. Prosecutor Eric Smith telling the jury one of West's other children said he witnessed one of the boys die, and said the other later disappeared after a thud was heard one night. Although the boys' bodies have not been found, the prosecution has said that evidence, including interviews with the West's other children, indicates the boys were killed in September of 2020, 3 months before the West reported them missing. The Wests are charged with second-degree murder, involuntary manslaughter, and other offenses, and face life terms in prison if convicted. You can follow our real.
So there you have it. That was day 2. Testimony also not in any of these day 1, day 2, or day 3, but there is an anticipation that the biological children of Trezell West, I think they were 10 and 6 at the time, and don't crucify me if I don't have the ages correct, but the 10-year-old made a statement that, again, as you heard the reporter say, that he woke up one night and he saw one of the boys, and I'm not sure if it was Orrin or Orson, but he saw him throwing up and changing color. And he also made statements to Officer Hansen that the mother, Jacqueline West, took out a pair of stethoscope, and listened to the boy's heart to hear if he was breathing, and did nothing, and did not call 911. Shocking day 2 testimony. Melanie, mother of 5, we're all parents here. I mean, it takes a real evil person if, in fact, this is true. And now we know these 2 are innocent until proven guilty. But for Christ's sake, this is just brutal to hear this.
I mean, these are the worst kind of cases where parents are accused of killing their children because nobody can believe that anybody could really do that. You know, we even saw that in Murdoch. People could not believe that Murdoch would kill his son. You know, I think that the Officer Hansen started testifying day 2, and then he continued today, which was day 3. And today was the cross-examination. So I think originally he said on direct that he did not see any evidence of these boys ever living there. And today, you were listening to Ron, I believe he was cross-examined with a bunch of photos.
Yes.
Right. And they said, well, do you see these chalk drawings? Well, these were the drawings from the back patio, weren't they? And again, I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah. Well, do you see these bunk beds here? Do you see the picture of the bunk beds? Don't these look like bunk beds where the kids would sleep? I don't know. Well, do you see these Christmas presents under the tree with the Orrin and Orson's name on it? Did you see those? You know, and he was confronted with all of these photographs that he really didn't remember seeing in real life when he was on the scene. And it was really harmful.
Yeah. And he had body cam. The defense kept going back to, well, let me refresh your memory. Because on your body worn camera, you picked up one of the gifts and opened them. So it's damning. It's damning. Today was a win. Day 3 was a win for the defense in my eyes. And if Bakersfield PD, I'm hoping and I'm praying to God, and Bill, you and I have had conversations about this so many times, that Bakersfield PD is 600-700 strong. They have their own dedicated specialized units. And I would imagine once they took over this case, which was just a month or 2 into this thing, that the investigation got tightened up. Can you just talk on that from a homicide detective sergeant? You were a supervisor in the A squad. What's your thoughts on Bakersfield? And hopefully we see some testimony from those detectives who took the case over.
Well, Ron, one of the most important things to a case like this is response to the scene. And clearly the response to the scene wasn't so tight. It wasn't as tight as it should have been. Maybe they didn't have the resources. Maybe they didn't have the talent that night. If I responded to a scene like that, I would want, 20, 25 detectives, because that's how many detectives you'll need to do everything correctly. The other thing is, this was probably a long-term child abuse case. These poor kids, Orrin and Orson West, were definitely being abused. And whether it was by the parents or by the other children, these poor kids were probably tortured. And that also brings us to, the whole foster care situation. Like, I never liked when people were in foster care to make money. Like, I don't even think Trezell had a job. His job was getting money to take care of these kids. And how much were they vetted to see if they were, in fact, good, quality human beings to raise kids? Ridiculous.
This was their main source of income. Their main source of income was coming from the state of California for the 4 foster children that they had. They had 2 biological kids and 4 foster children, which they then adopted and got a stipend also for adopting.
$4,000 a month.
And
Yeah.
Melanie, how well were they vetted to see if they were legitimate people? I had a woman one time in the projects. She had a 5-year-old foster child. And this was a beautiful little Spanish girl. And she put a fentanyl patch on her neck that was meant for an adult. And the little girl had a headache. In the morning, the girl was dead. And we went to the scene, and this idiot just said to her, "Oh, yeah, I put this patch because she had a headache." I was like, who gave you this kid? You know what I mean? I was just like, were you vetted? I mean, like, she did, and it wasn't even hers. It was her friend's.
Yeah.
It was a friend's prescription, and a fentanyl patch is for an adult, and it's for heavy duty pain. It killed this little 5-year-old.
Let me tell you, the Kern County Department of Social Services was responsible for placing these children with Trezell and Jacqueline West. And this is a whole nother argument and a whole nother show, because we have had tons and tons, hours and hours of conversation about how in the hell does 2 people who do not have any jobs, I think Jacqueline was like a home health aide, or cleaned houses and home health aide / or whatever. She homeschooled her kids. I don't even think that these guys have ever filed an income tax return. And if they did, it was probably something very small. How do you put 4 foster children / now they adopted these kids. They fostered them first because that's the steps that you got to go through. You foster and then you apply for adoption. And they did that with 4 kids and they had 2 of their own. So this is a household of 8. And there was an argument, Bill and Melanie, how the F did they buy the house in California City? How did they get a mortgage with no income? Last time I checked, the house that I live in here now for 27 years, I needed to prove that I had enough money in the bank to pay for this house. How did the Wests?
And here's another thing: the biological grandma, the older boy, I believe the older boy, Orrin, who was 4 years old at the time of his disappearance, he was placed with the Wests. I think in 2016, he was taken away from his biological parents because he had a spiral fracture or a compound fracture of his femur. The biological grandmother offered to take him, and they refused.
Wanda.
And instead placed him with the Wests.
Right.
And then when the mom gave birth to Orson in 2017, he was taken and given to them as well. And she was told, well, it's because they want to keep the siblings together.
Yeah. Disgusting. It reminds me of the failures that we just spoke about with the Thomas and Anthony Valva, right? The mother, Justina, was yelling and screaming at the top of her lungs in court that my kids are going to be killed, and it included her third son Andrew, and they basically told her, "Shut up, lady. You're not fit to have these kids." They gave custody to the father, and look at the rest is history. There's a big problem with the courts and the authorities that make these decisions. They do them quickly because their caseloads are high. They look to just get a proper placement in their eyes, and it's not always the proper thing. I want to play this 3-minute video of them outside the front of their home, and we'll listen to the disgusting deception that they show in this 3-minute and 58-second video. So let's do that, and then we'll wrap it up with day 3. I got a couple of other things that I want to talk about on day 3 about Christmas presents and a couple of little small points. But let's just let this roll because I want everybody to see this. Most of you have seen this, and I want to just say thank you to everyone who's given super chats. Jennifer Nobles, she's here. It's her son's 12th birthday. Thank you for being here. Thank you for that super chat. Michelle, thank you for your super chat. Cleta, thank you for your super chat, and any of them that we might have missed. I just don't like to break up the conversation. So sometimes when the super chats come in, I apologize. I can't get to them, but we really do appreciate them. So thank you and for your support here. All right, here's Trezell and Jacqueline West. I believe this is December 23rd of 2020. Let's let this roll. Sound would be good too.
For all the support we've seen. We just want to thank everyone in the community.
He said
for
you
all the
first.
Support we've seen.
Anybody catch that?
Felt so helpless. We just want to thank everyone in the community for all the support we've seen. We've felt so helpless, and seeing everybody out here really looking and helping out really means a lot.
So, tell us what happened the night the kids went missing.
Okay.
From our yard.
Okay. It was cold. I was going to make a fire. There's a lot of wood in this area right here next to our house. I opened up the back gate. I'm throwing wood, bringing it inside the house. My wife's inside. She was actually wrapping gifts, so we thought it was a good idea that our youngest two go outside and play with chalk in the back patio. Do not let them go on the dirt in the backyard. Keep them close. So I was playing with chalk. I came to the house. I saw them there. I went in the house. I came back out. I didn't see them now. I immediately went back in, asked my wife, did you see the boys? She said, no, they should be outside playing with chalk. I said, well, I didn't see them. So I came back outside and I started searching my backyard. I searched the whole thing. I realized that I left the gate open and I panicked, came inside the house, searched the house, me and my wife. Once that didn't pan out, I got in the van. I looked down the street, both directions. It was getting dark, getting cold, and I got in there and I hit a bunch of corners. I went down this street. I turned my light on. I searched. I called their names. Talked to a gentleman on the street on the other side over there. He didn't see me. So then I came home and I told my wife, we need to call the cops. It's getting dark and I need help. We got to get going. So I called the cops. Cops came. First thing they did was tell us to stay in the house so they can get a hold of us. And they had us just sitting there and we wanted to keep searching. But everybody came out in droves. And I wanted to thank you guys that night, but we couldn't go outside.
The cops told us the best are out here.
The best are out here searching. And we appreciate it. And nobody ever could never talk to anybody. And that was the issue.
We just want to thank everybody.
We really want to thank you guys.
Please, if anybody has seen them, please call, let somebody know.
Call the cops. Call California City Police Department. Call them and let them know what you've seen, if you see anything. Our boys, they are going to be rambunctious, okay? They are going to be here in this area. And I really would like to go in the houses, but it's not because I want to invade people's privacy. I just want to know if make sure. That's it.
For you guys, for people who are thinking that there's some kind of foul play involved, we just spoke to the biological mother. She says she had a conversation with you guys, and that she thinks there's some kind of foul play involved. That she thinks you guys did something.
And that's understandable.
What's your response to that?
That's understandable. I would think the same thing.
Yep.
I mean, that's exactly the point. And if we can find our babies, then guess what? That's no. And that's all I want is to find our babies. That's it. And I talked to her this morning, and I really wanted to tell her that I am completely sorry because we were entrusted with her children, and they came to us, and they became our children. We named them, and they are our children, and so we want them back. So please, if y'all could get back on what you guys are doing, we should be able to get a hold of somebody, but they took all of our tech, so they wanted to, I guess, just rule us out, which makes sense as part of the investigation. So that's pretty much it.
So there was the interview. Leaves a lot to be desired, right? When he says they're going to be rambunctious, and the way she prepped and kind of jump-started this thing, reminding him from the yard. Bill, you hummed in on that in the beginning when we watched this. And you could tell that this is not a well thought out story that they put together. And it's clear and evident that they are being deceptive and they're not telling the truth here.
Was he really that concerned with COVID? No. He has a gigantic mask on, and his two kids are missing now. Is he really that concerned? He's outside. He's really good. He didn't want anyone to see his mouth or his facial expressions. That's why he had that big damn mask on.
Hey, Melanie, I wanted to ask you, again, day 3, Officer Hansen from the California City Police Department was grilled on the stand in cross-examination. When the presence, the conversation about the presence and that whole line of questioning back and forth, it was on December 22nd. It was the day after the whole hoopla of the reporting. They were up all night. They were questioned till 1 a.m. So this was later, probably in the day on December 22nd. Some of the people who are watching and following this sent in some questions for me to ask you. And one of the ones that I highlighted is, could you ask Melanie if she feels that there was a possibility, and any of us could speak on this, but it was directed at you, that she wrapped presents after the fact and put them and placed them to stage them under the tree.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was thinking. When I watched them give this little press conference that they did, it seemed very rehearsed to me. So they had all their bullet points that they wanted to get out there, the chalk drawings, the not going in the dirt. So there were a lack of footprints. They seemed poorly rehearsed, but rehearsed, that they knew what they were going to say. So could they have also staged a scene? Sure. They went out and made some chalk drawings. They wrapped some presents. They put some stockings up for the kids. There were some other toys and things around to make it look like the kids were there. And if what we believe to be true is that these boys really were killed 3 months prior, they had a lot of time to get their act together, however you want to put it, and to stage this thing.
Yeah.
3 months is a long time.
I agree. And Cynthia Zimmerman, that's the Kern County District Attorney. I don't know why I had a problem with that. She stated somewhere between September 1st and September 30th of 2020. Now, we can all sit and speculate about how they could come up with this. We've yet to hear it day 1, 2, or 3. But I would imagine that they're going to have some concrete, very good, strong circumstantial evidence that will back up this September 1st to September 30th timeline. Bill, what are you thinking on that one?
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember when we first heard that and we were like shocked because you and I had said, we don't think the kids ever made it to California City. Both you and I said that.
Right.
And when the prosecutor said that it was 3 months earlier in September, we were like, wow, we were right. The kids never, because no one ever saw the kids at that house. They never saw them. So,
And as far as what we heard on day 2 from Officer Hansen is that he interviewed Trezell's 10-year-old son. And I don't want to say his name because it's been out there, it's been reported, and his name has been put out there. I'm not going to do that. But Trezell's biological 10-year-old son at the time, who's now 13, he stated that the boys both did make it there. But this is coming from a 10-year-old. And we heard today on cross-examination, Melanie, and I want to go to you on this. Mm-hmm. We heard defense attorney grill Hansen on how he qualified this 10-year-old to be able to make a statement. He was using a piece of paper because he said we didn't have the right paper to qualify him to see if he fully understood what he was asking him. And that question and that question and answer period that he did with this 10-year-old was for someone who was in custody for committing a crime as a juvenile. As an attorney, that's a no bueno, right?
No, it's not. You need to qualify him as a witness. I mean, he's a child witness. And she said, do you know what voir dire is of a child? And he said, I can't remember what he said. He probably said, I don't know. And she said, well, what was the first thing that you asked him? Did you ask him if he knows the difference between right and wrong? And he said, I think I did. And she said, well, what did he say? And the officer said, he said, no, he doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. So right away, that's a problem. She also questioned him about whether he knew that the child had special needs. And he said, no, I didn't know that. And she said, well, would you have questioned him differently if you knew that he had special needs? And I can't recall what his answer was to that, but I'm going to say he probably said, I don't know.
He said he didn't check. She asked him, did you check with his school teacher? And then she corrected herself. The Torres, the defense attorney, she said, wait a minute, they're homeschooled. Jacqueline is the teacher. But she asked him outright, did you qualify it to see if he had any special needs? And he said no.
Correct.
So,
Melanie, we had discussed it off the air before, but in the eyes of the court, is a 10-year-old swearable?
Those are the two questions. Do you know the difference between the truth and a lie? Do you know the difference between right and wrong? And it's up to the judge to determine whether or not the child is competent to testify. It's different in every case, and it's on a case-by-case basis. And there are cases where 10-year-olds have been declared competent to testify. I'm going to guess that they're not hanging their whole entire case on the testimony of this 10-year-old because they had 50 witnesses testify in front of the grand jury. And this trial is slated to go on until June 1st is when they're going to close. June 2nd, the case will go to a jury. So this case is going to go on for a very long time. And there's a lot more that we're going to hear about that hopefully is going to really make this thing a slam dunk for the prosecution.
So, Melanie, in essence, that question asked by the defense attorney to the officer was somewhat of an unfair question because, in a way, he was unqualified to do the interview, first of all. Like, as I said, if I would have responded to that scene, I would have got detectives from Special Victims who are trained in interviewing children. and
And
that
now
would have
we don't
covered us.
know.
This is a very small department from what I understand. I don't think they
Yeah.
had the resources for that,
They
right?
They definitely didn't. I think it was a total of under 10 police officers total in that department. And one detective that they hired, his name was Hernandez, they hired him to try to close old murder cases, old cold cases. So the California City Police Chief at the time, John Walker, who came from the LAPD, he said, we got to hire a detective to work our cold cases. So that was the only detective in the California City Police Department. This officer, Hansen, did first officer on the scene, interview and interrogation, initial interviews of witnesses, neighbors, and so forth. And he took no copious notes. It's obvious that he didn't. And if he did, he never reviewed them. You would think this is like the trial of the century for California City Police, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would think, okay, I'm going to be called. It's not like this was a surprise. He got trial prep from the district attorney's office. They told him, listen, this is what we can think that you're going to be asked questions on. He had time to prepare himself. And it seems like he really didn't. Bill, I want to talk to you about the evidence. We saw 4 search warrants, I think, executed at the California City home. They came out with computers. They came out with boxes. They came out with lots of different items. I'm going to play a little piece here, and then we'll come back and we'll talk, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll talk a little bit about this evidence that they pulled out of here. So let me just go to this because I wanted to play this, and then we'll wrap it up.
City home for more than a week now, but there may be some action in the case. This was the scene in California City just before 3 this afternoon, where police and federal agents forced their way into the home where the boys lived with their adoptive parents and 4 brothers and sisters, leaving a few hours later with items from the home. Our Perla Shaheen was there when it happened and has the latest on this investigation, now in its 8th day. Perla, what have you learned?
Yes, Eitan, police just left the home with certain items of evidence. The chief of police told me that they are going to go back to Bakersfield to be analyzed by police there. But this is the same search warrant that California City Police served last Wednesday night. So they're just going back into the house again to get more items of evidence to be investigated. Now, this happened just hours after the chief of police, John Walker, told us that he suspects foul play and that he confirmed the 4 other children of these adoptive parents are in protective custody. The adoptive parents of 3-year-old Orson and 4-year-old Orrin West reported them missing just before 6 p.m. last Monday. Today, Chief of Police John Walker gave an update on the investigation.
I can't comment on that, whether I think they're alive or not. I do suspect foul play. We haven't been able to put together, how the boys got out of the yard or where they've gone.
He told us there are 4 other agencies working on this case. We know 2 of which are Bakersfield Police and the FBI. He says California City has a small police department and can use all the help they can get.
But we've contacted just about everybody in this neighborhood. None of the neighbors have seen the kids.
He says police extensively dug up the backyard, but did not find any leads.
We're just trying to...
That was the night, Bill, you and I went live when that's the FBI. They dug up that whole backyard and they went over it with the, I forgot the name of that item that they used. It was like a sonar thing so they could see if anything was buried underneath the ground. But this was an unbelievable, impressive effort that was put forward, not by the California City Police Department, but by the FBI. And the FBI forensics excavated that backyard, and they were there all night. I'm just going to let a little bit more of this play, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap it up.
Pick up anything, any clues that we can possibly find to find out where they had gone, and also to confirm that they're not in the backyard.
He also confirmed that the 4 other children of the adoptive parents are in protective custody.
If there's any kind of a juvenile situation where there's been any kind of neglect or any kind of harm to any of the children, we automatically have to take all the other kids out of the house.
He says he doesn't know exactly where the adoptive parents are, but they aren't in their house. Police still have their white van and are in contact with them.
I definitely believe people know. Someone knows. And I would hope that person would come forward. I mean, we got 2 young I mean, in my opinion, babies that we don't know where they're at and we can't find them.
He says the biological family has been cooperative in the investigation. He would not clarify where police have searched so far and says the department doesn't have the resources to send search teams into the desert.
So, Bill, we gotta hope and pray, and Melanie, we have to hope and pray that the evidence that they took out of that home was analyzed by a proper and a competent authority. The FBI's forensic team, as Ed Wallace says, is second to none. And Bakersfield Police Department, I don't know a lot about them, but the little bit of research that they did into them, it's a very busy place. There's a lot of murders going on there, and it is a busy area. Bill, thoughts on the evidence, and then we'll wrap.
Look, I think they're looking for bedding, toys, shoes, clothing that could possibly belong to the kids. DNA, the one child said that he saw he didn't know which child vomit.
Yeah.
That would leave DNA that could be tested and verified to who it belongs to. I still don't believe that they ever, Orrin and Orson West ever made it to that house. The other stuff, of course, the electronic evidence, the computer, and we say this in every case, the cell phone, both of their cell phones are a treasure trove of information, cell site information, calls, text messages, all of that stuff is so important.
Yes. And we know from Trezell and Jacqueline West out in front of that house, they said they took all of our tech. So computers, iPads, we heard that in court today, that they had lots of different, a lot of different electronic evidence that was processed. This case is, we're in for the long haul. You might as well buckle up if you're following this, because this is in the infancy stage, day 3, and we have a whole week off. They're not going to come back until April 10th after Easter. And then, like Melanie said, they've have the courtroom slated till the first week of June. There has to be a ton of witnesses and evidence. Like you said, 50 people were called in by the secret grand jury on this case to testify. So we're going to be hearing from a lot of people. Melanie, your thoughts before we wrap on the defense and on the prosecution side? What are some of the hurdles? As we saw today, it was a loss for the prosecution, hands down.
I think so. I think that maybe they knew this guy was going to be crucified on cross, and that's why they put him up first, because now there's going to be weeks and weeks of more testimony. Maybe they'll forget about it because there'll be so much other, positive testimony for the prosecution. I think that the prosecution has to overcome the fact that there are no bodies, but listen, it's not impossible. I mean, as long as there's enough circumstantial evidence for a jury to infer that the victims are dead, number one, and that the defendants did it, number two, they can be convicted of second-degree murder. And they're not going for first-degree murder in this case. First-degree murder requires premeditation and it can also involve the death penalty. Second-degree murder involves no premeditation, and it could just involve an intent to harm without actually causing death. So both sides have a lot of hurdles. I'm surprised that one of the defendants didn't roll over on the other one, and that they're being tried together. But we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I like to refer to these boys as classic and sincere. That's the name that their parents gave them, and that's the way I want to refer to them. I don't know why these adoptive parents felt the need to change their names, but God bless classic and sincere, and let's find out what happened to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Melanie, for that. And for those of you who don't know, the murder charges is murder second degree times 2, 187A second degree, involuntary manslaughter 192B, which is a B felony, willfully and cruelty to a child 273A, new effect as of 4/12, and conspiracy to commit false report, conspiracy to commit a crime 182A felony, and false reporting of a crime. Guys, I'm gonna wrap it up with you. Roe is part of the biological family. She wants to come on, and I think one of her good friends are going to come on and say a prayer. Bill, I want to thank you for taking out the time. I know you're it's really tough down there in Florida where you are. It's, it's a rough day at the beach every
I
day.
got a little too much sun today. Yeah.
I want everybody here in the chat, all 1,400 of you, to go over and subscribe to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories with Detective Phil and Sergeant Bill. Melanie is part of their team as well. She's always on with them. You can follow them on Anchor, which is a podcast, and it has all of their stuff. But go over to their YouTube. I'm going to link it down below. Bill is one of my suggested channels. So he is, you can go to his YouTube channel and get the most accurate, up-to-date information from a police perspective. And the guests that he has with Professor Mike Geary and all of the great guests that Bill calls on, he uses, like he said, the cross-pollination. He goes on to LinkedIn and we share people. Like today, he said, "What are you, crazy? Let's get Melanie on here." And I was like, oh, that'll be awesome. So thank you, Melanie and Bill, for everything that you do. I'm going to end the show with the biological family and we'll say a little prayers and so forth. So good night, guys. Thank you for joining. And I mean, there's going to be much more. Melanie, will you promise to come back again, even if Bill gets a little jealous?
Oh, I love how you guys support each other. I think it's so cute. And of course, I'm here for whoever wants me to come and comment. So anytime.
Thank you. And Melanie, if it's all right with you, would it? I mean, I don't know if you want me to do this in the description. Could I put a way for people to contact you, or would you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, Instagram is the best way to contact.
Okay, so I'll put your social if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Yeah, because Melanie, you act as well, right? You're an actress.
I do.
Yeah. So contact her, and I'll put her social media links in the description. All right, guys. Good night. I'm gonna get Roe on, and we're gonna say a little prayer, and we'll wrap it up. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
See you soon. Bye. Bye, Bill. All right. Guys and girls, I got a special treat because Roe, she's from the biological family side. As soon as she gives me the thumbs up, I'm going to add her onto the stream. And I think Keish was going to come on, Kishallday, and say a little prayer. So I see her, she joined in too. So I'm going to put both of these beautiful women on with me as soon as they give me the thumbs up. When they're ready, hair and makeup, is everything good with the ladies? You guys just give me the thumbs up when you're ready. I got one from Roe Roe. Keish, I got one from her too. Roe, Keish, listen, I want to just say this. I know both of you have been in court and watching the proceedings. I know we can't really speak about what you guys have seen inside the court because we're going to abide by the laws of the land. But I want to just tell you, you guys are like family to me. I have such a strong bond with you guys. The amount of phone calls that I've made back and forth between myself and you, Roe, and Keish, the prayers and the birthday wishes from me and your family, everything that you've done for this case and for our boys, Cinsere and Classic, is just second to none. You guys are top-notch, great people. So thank you both.
You're welcome.
Thank you for everything, and you're welcome, Bill.
Roe, can you talk a little bit about some of the frustrations or what you and your family going through, and how many people have been in the court from the bio side? Like, a lot of people want to know these questions. Like, I saw in the chat, but I kind of couldn't get to it. Like, people were asking, was the boy's mother there? Well, like, are there these questions that you might not want to answer, or is this something that you could answer for us?
Keisha, if you want to take that real quick, why they're not,
well,
let me just say
a lot
this.
of them is not there because they're witnesses.
Okay.
The mom's mother was there a couple times. The sister of her is always there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them can't come because they're witnesses.
Gotcha. All right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, if they're witnesses, they can't be in the audience and listening to
Right.
all the testimony. All right, that's fair. And thank you for answering that, because the reason I asked it is there's so many people were asking about that. So I thought that it would be a good thing to get out of the way. So Jennifer's son is turned 12 today, and
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
She sent me a message, Keish, that you wanted to come on and kind of end the show with the prayer for our boys.
Jennifer want me to.
Okay, well, listen, I didn't want to push anybody into this, but I welcome any time to pray. I mean, my aunt is a Catholic nun, and I've been praying all my life. But before we get to that, Ro, do you have anything maybe that you might want to say for the people who are following your cousin's case, your both case? Do you have any words or anything that you might want to put out there?
Yes, I do actually. I just first I want to thank God for walking with us this whole journey. We had our hands tied from the beginning, and regardless if they were adopted out, as me being the bio cousin and the father is, one of the bio fathers is my cousins, and knowing what he went through, I mean, I had no choice but to go hard for step up.
Yes.
So that's why I'm involved, and that's why I'm still here, because it's gonna only get harder for them as bio parents. You know what I mean?
Understand.
And but that mustard seed of faith is why we're here. And in Keisha's prayer, leading prayer every month we had a candlelight. I guess you could say vigil now, because I didn't like saying that because I didn't believe they were deceased. I mean, you have vigils when somebody's deceased, but we just said candlelight. We changed it to candlelight prayer until the DA announced that they were deceased 3 months before.
And there's nothing wrong with holding on to hope, right?
Yes, I mean, look what happened in Desiree Thompson's case.
Yes.
Cherie, prayers to her always, her strength, because grief is nothing that you could, it'll always be with you.
Right.
But look at Cherie. She held on to hope for 10 years. And they found, so when this happened in Cal City, when the boys got reported missing, and she was out there still, going through what she's going through, trying to get answers for her daughter, but to come out there and support, Classic and Cinsere, because I'm not going to call them adopting names. Y'all know what it is.
Absolutely.
But, for her to still stand there and fight, to find 2 missing babies, toddlers, it takes strength, and that's why her name is With Pain Comes Strength, because she's a strong woman. And so thank God that he put her on this path. God put everybody here for a reason. Everybody had something to do with why we're here today.
Right.
And with no bodies, but to bring these charges says a lot. And being there on the first search out there in Cal City to now, everything that's been happening since, it's hard to hear, what's going on in court when you've seen otherwise.
Right.
But I just want to thank everybody for helping, supporting with the billboards, the awareness, Keisha making the shirts, the mask, banners, everything, like sharing their posts, sharing their faces, talking about them, keeping their names out there. It all matter, spreading the awareness on any case matters.
Right.
So, I mean, even though you guys take that 1 second to share something, I wish that I could share more. I just been so, caught up in this, but I know there's a lot of more children who are missing, and I just haven't had time to really I'm barely trying to get mentally prepared for this myself, with everything else going on. But without faith, we would not be here today.
Yes. Amen. Amen to that. Hey, I want to just say this too, and I want to give you a little bit of inspiration here as far as this trial is going. What we saw today was one of the lower points I think that we'll see during the whole course of this trial. But I think going forward, once California City is done with their testimony and Bakersfield comes in, and the FBI, don't forget, we're going to hear from the FBI and all of the forensics teams that were involved in taking some of the electronic evidence and so forth. These are going to be consummate professionals who are going to get up on the stand and give real good, competent testimony. So I feel it in my my soul that this is not the theme of how this trial is going to go. Today was definitely a low point, and I got to tell you, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, Roe. You know how I am. I give it to you straightforward. I've had conversations with you and your mom, God rest her soul, on the phone, at barbecues, with my family, walking away, talking for hours with you guys. It only gets it only goes up from here. So I want you to just hold on to that, and I hope and pray that the district attorney and all of the witnesses and all of the folks that come and testify here going forward would be a different story than what we saw today.
Oh yes.
And I'm sorry that I was texting with you. I knew that you were going out on a break, but I had to send text because I had to blow off some steam to somebody.
Yeah.
You
I already knew. I mean, if I would have texted you back, then I would have been breaking the law, right? Because I would have been in court. But when I turned on my phone, when I walked out that courtroom, I mean, I just seen your messages, and I was thinking the same thing. Like, I mean, when you take on a profession, you know what I mean? Especially, you know, in that situation.
Just be prepared. That's all I'm saying. It's like all he needed to do was be prepared, and he was not prepared. It was obvious that he was not prepared. So
I've always said in the beginning, I mean, knowing what I know today with the past 3 days of the hearing the witnesses and all the, you know, testimonies and stuff. I mean, I'm gonna tell you like this: everybody was on it. We, you know, and that's all we could only do so much. Like, they don't have no bodies, so we can't wear a mask, we can't wear shirts. I mean, we can, but to protect this case, like to the you know, the whole trial, we have to really just watch our steps, you know, watch how we move and things like that, because by the end of the day, it's not about nobody besides Classic and Cinsere getting justice. So if we have to bite our tongues and, I mean, stay mentally strong and play with our own emotions, then to get justice, then, I mean, we're angry inside and things like that. But if we did act our anger out, I mean, it wouldn't be good for the case. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So we just leave it in God's hands, man. And just, you know, if you come to the court, you know, just come respectful. Don't talk. I mean, you know, they gave us specific rules to follow.
Right.
You know,
don't come to the court. Don't replay the audio. Anybody that's on YouTube or any social media, TikTok or anything that's rebroadcasting that audio, you're jeopardizing the case. If you are truly here to support justice for Cinsere and Classic, you're not going to be rebroadcasting this stuff for your own benefit. The audio is, like I said, I listened to it all day long. I did not record any of it. I would never rebroadcast it. Even, you know, it's okay for me to speak about it after it's over, but not while it's happening, not after it's happening. No rebroadcasting of this stuff. So anybody that knows somebody who's done that, please just ask them to take it down and cease and desist. Let's end this with a prayer. Keish, what do you say?
Well, for everyone that don't know who I am Keisha. I am very close to the foster mom. I have touched these babies, kissed these babies on their cheeks, and held them. So that's why I play a big role in this. But what I would like to say is we just thank God for bringing us this far. And we just thank God for waking us up this morning, being able to go to court. And Lord, we just ask that you right now that we just cast down all assignments that come against this case. The devil has no authority over this case. We have served him notice that he has no authority over this case. And we bind up everything that try to come against this case. Any person that's sitting there and is against it, Lord, I ask that you show them for who they are right now, Lord, in the name of Jesus. Lord, I ask that you touch the judge, the jurors, everyone that's in there, the defense, everyone, Lord. I just ask that you fix it, Lord. Lord, we giving it to you, Lord. You brought us this far, and we know you're not fit to leave us now, Lord. Lord, we just ask that justice be served for Classic and Cinsere Pettis. Lord, in the name of Jesus, we just thanking you in advance. And Lord, we know we're going to hear things that we might not want to hear, Lord. But I ask that you just touch our minds, Lord, to keep the peace in our hearts, to keep our mouths shut. Lord, we just asking you to help us, Lord. I'm asking you to give us a double portion of strength every time we walk in that courtroom, Lord. In the name of Jesus, Lord, we just thank you for everyone that's been on a case, that's listening. Lord, to all the ones that's listening, Lord, touch them mentally, Lord. Mentally, Lord, touch them right now, Lord. In the name of Jesus, Lord, touch everyone that's sitting in the courtroom that's listening, have to go home to their families, Lord. Touch them mentally, Lord, because Lord, you know this is an emotional roller coaster for us right now, Lord. But we thanking you in advance that you're gonna work it out. We thank you in advance that you already done worked it out, Lord. While we praying for this case, Lord, we know that you already done fixed it, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Thank God. Amen.
Amen. Amen to that.
Amen.
That was
Thank you,
beautifully
Keish.
said. Thank you, Keish.
You're welcome.
I want to just tell everybody to follow Keish on Facebook, and the groups for, you know, the groups that you guys run are fantastic. They keep everybody up to date. There's the prayers, there's all of the great positivity that goes on in there. I'm honored to be friends with you guys, and I can't wait to the day that I get out there to Bakersfield and see
We
you.
can't wait either.
Well, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I have family down in Southern California, so I gotta make a double trip. I gotta see my extended family and my family, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law. I haven't seen them in quite a few years since COVID. So I'm gonna get there, and we're gonna, you know, be together, and it will be a beautiful thing. I want to just say thank you for you two ladies for coming up here and for always supporting Crime Time with DutyRon, because we try to do what we can with these cases, and we cover them with respect and dignity, and that's what this is about. We bring
And we appreciate you giving us knowledge on some things we may not know and don't understand. We thank you for breaking it down all the time so we can understand more.
Yes, thank you, DutyRon, for that.
You're very welcome. It's about learning, and listen, when there's some things that I learned from you guys, so it is always important for us to share our knowledge, and you know, knowledge is wealth. So it's all good. Listen, I want to just thank everybody who has watched this live broadcast. For those of you who are not yet subscribed, consider subscribing to this great community, following these two great ladies on Facebook and all their social medias. Also, if I want to say thank you to the replay viewers, moderators who volunteer, they're not paid, who keep the chat classy and clean. So thank you to the mod squad, ladies in here who moderate, and men are second to none. So thank you for you guys. And as I always like to end all of my live streams, ladies, God bless the world, God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially these two little babies, Cinsere and Classic. We send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to their families and to everybody in Bakersfield and everyone in that community who's affected by this. All right. Good night from New York City, and thank you so much for joining. Peace and love from Crime Time with DutyRon. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Take care.